We thought to kick us off, we would share with you what we have observed as some, I guess you could call them trends. Let's see. Okay. So these are 10 sort of observations that we've noted throughout the course of 2023. Some of these things are trends, but I would actually say, in fact, many of them are more like tensions. So things where the pendulum swings one way and then the pendulum swings the other way. So let's just jump right into it. Okay, the first trend, a big shift in geopolitics. I'm actually going to shift over to this microphone. So we have seen for years, of course, industry influences government and government influences industry. We've known that within the mobility space, but we've seen some real sort of fundamental developments this year, and in particular related to the rise and the significance of China on the global mobility stage. And we're going to talk about that today at lunch. Chinese companies now have very much shifted from being imitators, where they were a decade or two ago, to very much being innovators. And we're living in this world where I was just in Munich 2 months ago at the IAA Mobility Show, and people were saying, what are people talking about? It really came down to one word. People were talking about China. People were talking about the fact that great electric vehicles were arriving in the European market at great prices. And, deep concerns, and just a week later, the president of the European Commission made this announcement about, looking into a kind of anti-subsidy investigation into EVs coming from China. So really, really sort of important sort of development that we've observed. Okay, a second development that we've observed is around what you could call the sort of increasing headwinds facing autonomous vehicles. Facing autonomous vehicles. So, we know that automated vehicles have kind of passed through that Gartner hype cycle, rising to the peak of expectations and plummeting to the trough of disillusionment. But there's a very sort of still strong and bright future forward for automated mobility. What we've seen emerge is a serious public dialogue this year around why do we want automated mobility? And of course, what we've seen, and of course, just most recently, with last week, with Cruise having the California Department of Motor Vehicles suspend its license to operate, we've seen really significant developments in the space this year. So that's a second trend. Third trend has to do with the nature of what automobiles are. And one of the big buzzwords that we've heard in the industry is this concept of software-defined vehicles. So what does it mean? And it's an interesting question. We were just discussing it yesterday with our friends from Hyundai. Software-defined vehicles at its forefront means bringing sort of the personalization that you have on your smartphone into your automobile. So it's very much about the customer experience. But equally, it's about the architecture of vehicles, how we actually build vehicles. Traditionally, let's say led by Volkswagen, we developed mechanical platforms that were modular and interchangeable. It was a mechanical architecture. And now we're moving into a kind of software-forward architecture. So in many ways, very different world. When I started my career as an engineer at Ford, we built engines, we built transmissions, because that was core business. And now batteries are core business, and system on a chip is core business for automotive OEMs. So it really is a very sort of dramatic transformation. A fourth trend is around urban micromobility, I would call this the kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back development. So micromobility, moving around cities, on scooters, on e-bikes, even just walking, it holds such tremendous potential to deliver the mobility that we need in a sustainable manner in cities. And yet, we've seen this shift of moving from a world where scooters are just dumped onto streets to a world where, in fact, cities put out contracts and they invite providers to work with as partners. So maybe a shift from competition in the market to competition for the market. But we know we need the basic infrastructure, we need protected bike lanes, and we've also seen some financial flows as well. I mean, I looked just at Bird scooter company. It peaked in valuation at $2.5 billion, and just recently it was delisted from the New York Stock Exchange due to a low valuation. So a 5th trend has to do with kind of capturing externalities and moving toward a real world of dynamic pricing. I'm not talking about cordon pricing, which is where you pay a fee to enter a certain part of the city, like what London implemented many years ago. I'm not talking about congestion pricing, which is where you pay more by time of day, but a true dynamic pricing system where, in fact, it's based on the level of demand. That is a really exciting development that we can see in the future. There are several folks here from Ferrovial, from Sintra. They are doing actually dynamic pricing on the I-66 outside of Washington, D.C., on several road networks here in the United States. So it's a very, very interesting and exciting development. We've seen it in congestion pricing schemes in Singapore, Stockholm, many cities, and we are hoping to see more of this in the future. Okay, number 6. This is not so much a trend, this is a stabilization of a trend, at least for now. So this is about the situation with COVID and working from home and sort of where are we in this world of work from home, work at the office? Well, it seems like, at least for now, we're in a hybrid world. And these data from Nick Bloom over at Stanford that Jinhua has collaborated with show a kind of stabilization in the percentage of paid full days that are worked from home. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is this concept of working from a third place, a cafe or a friend's house, or maybe sitting on the beach somewhere. That has certainly been significantly on the rise. It's about a third of remote working is happening from this third place. And it has very, very important consequences for mobility demand patterns. Okay, it's trend number 7. Again, attention about what you could call a sort of hesitation in global electric vehicle markets. We've certainly seen it here in the United States. A year ago, it was really tough to buy an electric vehicle here. You were put on a waiting list and the dealers could charge a premium. Now that is not the case. Will that be the case going forward? To be determined. I would say this is a sort of temporary setback, but that's going to be a big part of our conversation today. And we have to understand the actual capacity, the battery capacity. We'll have a lot of conversations about that later on today. Where are we going to get these minerals, these materials? It takes a long time to build a new mine somewhere, 10 years, 20 years, long life cycles. And then we've seen so many developments in the public charging space as well. So this year, some really exciting and interesting developments with effectively here in the United States, the Tesla charging standard, the North American charging standard, effectively being adopted by several automakers. Okay. Again, number 8, is it a trend? Well, in some ways, yes. I mean, we see rising infrastructure costs for transportation, particularly here in the US. I was talking about this in Europe a couple weeks ago, and they said it's the same thing here as well. But there's so many reasons for this, and we will get into this, I think, a little bit on our first panel today. And the reasons are incredibly varied, from procurement to labor to institutional knowledge capacity at state DOTs. There's all sorts of reasons. But it is an important issue to watch and to understand. If we're going to spend over $1 trillion in infrastructure in this country, of course, we want to get $1 trillion worth of value. And we're very pleased to have the administrator of the Federal Highway Administration, Shaylin, with us this morning. Trend number 9 is about the capital markets in mobility. If you had asked me, if you told me 4 years ago, hey, John, there's going to be this thing called COVID, it's going to be a global pandemic, and you're going to see oceans of money flooding into mobility technology, I would have said you're crazy. But in many ways, that's exactly what we saw. And now we've seen sort of the backlash. So lots of capital flowed in, but now subsequently, a lot of those valuations have decreased significantly. And then finally, a trend or a concept very pertinent to the world of transportation is about the future of work. What is the social contract? Why do we struggle to hire bus drivers for public transit agencies across the United States? Why are we seeing this kind of epic UAW struggle? Car companies they struggle to hire software talent. If we want to develop software-defined vehicles, you need software engineers, and you need to be able to hire those people over companies like Alphabet and Amazon and so forth. So these are, again, the purpose of this is to kind of whet your appetite here, to get us thinking about what are the most salient and pertinent issues in the mobility space. And what I would ask from all of you is, what's missing? What did we get wrong? Let's talk about this. Let's try to figure this out. And that's a big part of our point, our objective for today. Okay, with that, I would like to invite Jinhua up to the stage to say a couple words for us. Thank you. I'll just advance that. Oh, go ahead.
Great, yeah. Thank you so much, John. Good morning, everybody. First of all, John mentioned these 10 trends and challenges. Isn't MIT supposed to solve all those problems? That's right. But here I would say that MIT or all academic institutions, we need to acquire a degree of humility. Before we can solve this problem, we need to even be aware of this problem, right? That's why we invite all you guys here to share with us the challenges on the ground. 3 years ago, when I founded MIT Mobility Initiative, I brought professors and students together, right? But it's actually John really helped to bring the industry, the government, the broader societal forces together. So with that, thank you, John, for bringing this up. And this today really is tremendous. Right. So I want to ask a few questions from what MIT think about these issues here, right? Throughout human history, we invented a fantastic set of technologies that help us move from A to B. Given this pace, we would think that we should live in paradise in transportation now, right? But if you live in Boston, you probably have a different view here, right? Has this technology progress translated into the betterment of the mobility system? If in Boston, the answer is no. Right? And this is not unique to Boston. Zhao mentioned China. I don't know how many of you have been to China before. How many of you have been to China before? 2/3 about, right? So that's what you see today. Nothing surprising, just like Boston, all these big cities look like this. But few of you may have been to China 40 years ago. This is Beijing, the same city, in 1982. What do you see in this picture? Pedestrians, bicycles, public transit. By the way, all electrified public transit. Right? How do we call this picture? We call this sustainable travel, low carbon travel, active travel, healthy travel, green travel, all the beautiful vocabularies we created to describe. This is the paradigm, this is the dreamland of today's transportation professionals. Well, Beijing as a city strives itself to move away from this paradigm and back to this typical motorized system. So the first question I would say is, as a transportation, as a profession, we're utterly confused. What do we want? Let me give you another example. In autonomous vehicle, we've been debating this question for at least a decade or two, right? How safe is safe enough? And collectively, we fail to give an answer. Right? But actually, to be fair to autonomous vehicle, if you look at human driving vehicles, did we have an answer? No. We really don't know what we want. Right? Further than that, when 42,915 people died in the road in 2021, who took responsibilities? Unclear. And we just let it be, and life continue, and that's it. So that's the first thing. I really invite everybody in today's discussions throughout the multiple sessions to ask, what is success? And this question is getting more complicated because for a while, transportation is kind of solving congestion problem. But today, we're given, or we aim to strive towards a multiple objective for sustainable problem, as a public health problem, as social justice problem, as personal identity problem, as urban creativity problem. Right? So while from one side we have all this exciting technology come at us, but this side, I think our objective gets much more complicated. There are clear tensions among these objectives. Right? So not only we need to define what's success, but also we need to define when there are tension, how do we trade off between them? So that's question number one. Question number two, what defines the future? I guess each one of us have some answer to that. I'd like you to actually think about it. If I ask you this question, how would you think? Right. And how, again, all throughout the day, let's collectively think about this question. Right. Let me give you my personal view, which is behavior and computation. Right. Behavior, what do I mean? We ask questions like, is travel social? Is travel emotional? Is travel perceptual? Right? There are a whole bunch of, for example, business decisions, like EV range anxiety, Tesla asked that question, ride-sharing pricing, that Uber asked that question, AV adoption, Waymo asked question, congestion pricing, DOT asked this question, the whole bunch of business decisions or policy decisions. And you can translate all of them into a behavior question. So that's one set of things. Second, on computation, right? For all these technologies, like connected vehicles, electric vehicles, drones, decarbonization, autonomous vehicle, computation becomes the foundational layer for all these technologies. I think in the future will be the interplay between behavior and computation that defines the future. So here we want to bring the behavior thinking, like asking questions like emotion, social, perceptual question, and connect it with these technologies. I use transportation, I use computation as the foundation to provide representation, explanation, but also prediction, control, and creation. Question number three, how is MIT contributing? As I mentioned, I brought the professors together Zhao brought all these industry groups together. We're working on research, education, entrepreneurship, and engagement. But in what ways, in what modes am I contributing? I put it in 3 categories: solving the short-term technical problem, second, develop the medium platform capacity, and thirdly, catalyze strategic, institutional, and social changes. Lastly, I would mention that how does MIT serving the general public? For that, I do see quite a dangerous trend that as a layperson, I feel disconnected with what's going on in the world, particularly in the technology side. The more advanced the technology, like quantum computing, genetic editing, artificial intelligence, the less I feel I'm part of it. Right? I feel this is, I couldn't understand of this, I have nothing to do, and isolated from it. So as another part, I think I do want to emphasize, and also hopefully through all of you guys, to help inform the public, to connect the public to this development. And also say that compared to other technology, transportation is something everybody can talk about, anybody can connect personally. So these are 3 questions I leave with you guys. I hope we can discuss over the day. Thank you so much.